Your name and role at OUA.
My name is Kirk Charlotte. My role, depending on the moment, but depends on the moment, but in general, I'm the Director of Italian Programs in Italy.
My name is Charlotte Double. I'm the Director of Student Affairs in Italy for the OU in Arezzo program.
What's your favorite thing about working at OUA?
It's two things, really. I mean, there's the students, I think, are fantastic to work with because it keeps me young, at least. It keeps me up to date on things, and it's always pushes me to kind of do things better in a more innovative way if I can. The other reason I like working at OUA is because the people I work with are extremely capable, and they're extremely creative, and they really make my job a lot easier. So I enjoy that part of it too.
Students, visiting faculty, other OUA friends with different situations or different services that they'd like to take advantage of here in Arezzo. Because it's an interesting way to let our students or our staff or faculty understand a little bit more intricately the wealth of resources, services that the town of Arezzo and in Italy in general have to offer beyond just the academic programs that they're pursuing.
Something you learned as a student.
If you don't know how to write, you're always going to suffer.
Something that I learned as a student was that I wanted to find out as much as I could about other cultures and other languages. I had the opportunity to study abroad myself as an undergraduate student in Spain and took advantage of that opportunity and learned Spanish quite well. Then went on to do a master's program at New York University in Madrid. So I was able to understand how important and valuable studying abroad is for a student as an undergrad and as a graduate.
If you could learn to do anything, what would it be?
Is probably to work with my hands a little bit better. Fabricating metal and wood and building my own furniture. Those are the kinds of things I certainly would have done again and pursued as a career.
What would I would like to learn? I'd like to learn how to play the acoustic guitar. I have very little skill and or talent or ability in music, and if I could go back to my youth, I would love to play the acoustic guitar because I love its sound, and I think it's a pretty cool instrument.
If you won the lottery, what is the first thing you would do?
If I had a lot of money, I'd buy a boat and live on a boat for a couple weeks out of the year, and I think that would be kind of cool.
Probably pay out the debts of a lot of people I know that for good or bad reasons have other things to pay off, and it seems to me that if someone becomes unexpectedly wealthy, one of the things you could do with that wealth is share it to other people who really could benefit from it, and then probably take a whirlwind trip around the world for a couple years and see how people live or where people live in places that you've always just dreamed of going but never had the money to get there.
When you have some free time, how do you pass that time?
So I like to cycle. I like to try to stay healthy in any way I can because the years are creeping up on me and it's not getting any easier in that respect. So I try to stay healthy. That's kind of my hobby. It has to do with trying to roll back the years, perhaps. Maybe it's looking over my shoulder too much, but keeps me as young as I can possibly be.
I usually kind of do a couple different things. Being a mom, having a full-time job, you tend to sort of do the things on your list of the things you have to do today. And then once you sort of finish those things, I like to do things like go for a walk in the Tuscan hills that surround Arezzo, which is a nice, beautiful, healthy thing to do. I also like to read. I get a couple different subscription magazines delivered here to my house.
If you could be any fictional character, who would you choose?
And there's always the Marvel aspect of things which comes to mind. I'd love to be Spider-Man. I love the idea that you don't have to take things seriously all the time.
Wonder Woman. She's my favorite.
What's your favorite indoor-outdoor activity?
Activity is cycling. When I'm in shape. When I'm not in shape, it's not fun. I don't like to be indoors. I don't. That's why this job is fantastic, because I can be out and about and roaming around Italy and still get paid and be doing my job, and that's a huge benefit for this job. So thinking about trying to do something indoors, if I'm indoors and I'm looking for something to do, I pick up a book and I read about something that I think I already know about, like Leonardo da Vinci, and I'll find a book that I have that probably thinks about or writes or speaks of Da Vinci in a way that I hadn't thought of, and I try to expand myself that way.
I like to cook. I'm not a great cook, but I was raised in a family with a lot of brothers and sisters, so I think my mom, she was a good cook, but she cooked to feed lots of people, so she didn't have time to be creative. So when I have time, free time, I like to try out new recipes or make things for dinner or desserts and things like that. Favorite outdoor activity is hiking or biking or just walking out and about. Again, it's so beautiful in this area of Tuscany where we live, and I grew up in a more industrial looking place that was flat in Ohio, and so I'm always just taken aback by how pretty it is and how lucky we are that we can go a very short distance and find ourselves in rolling hills, lush green scenery.
What house chore do you absolutely hate doing?
House chore that I hate doing is dusting. It's just so useless because it just gets dusty again. There's no sense of accomplishment. So mopping the floors, you can see it gets wet, it dries, it looks cleaner, but dusting is it's just a pain.
Ironing. I hate ironing. I actually don't do it very often, which is very contrary to a lot of women in Italy. Apparently iron just about everything, and I iron just about nothing.
If you could meet anyone, living or dead, who would you meet and why?
I have to say, I would probably want to meet Donatello, the early Renaissance artist. I think he would be a fascinating individual to know better, and plus it's somebody I know a little bit about, so I could ask the right questions.
I would like to meet Isabel Allende, who is actually living. She's one of my favorite authors. She is a wonderful storyteller, and she's from Chile, so she comes from a part of the world that has always intrigued me, and I think I would like to sort of pick her brain as to how she composes her stories, and having read most, if not all, of her books, how she takes a story from just something either that happened in her own life or something that relates to something she's experienced and pulls it through to be a very interesting, well-written story.
What 3 traits define you?
Oh my goodness. I should have got these questions ahead of time. Persistent, loyal, and I think creative.
Independence, responsible, sometimes perhaps a little bit too directed. Sometimes it feels a little rigid and could be perceived as rigid by other people. But I think that growing up over the years and having done what we've done in terms of experiences and travel and places we've gone to, those are the traits that I think have probably followed me throughout my adult life.
What's the coolest or most important trend that you see today?
Being in this moment when things are starting to turn, or hopefully are turning, and acceptance is a given, and judication is not okay, I think is a very important time to be in, and I'm learning a lot from it.
The power that young people have realized in protesting in mass, in mass groups, or following a cause and using social media to get out their voice, I think is a very cool trend.
What would you like to do for a career if you weren't doing this?
I used to go as a kid collect fossils, and I was a geology double major, art history. and geology up until the last year of my undergraduate, and then I just stuck with the art history. But if I wasn't an art historian, I think I'm sure I'd be a paleontologist or a geologist of some kind. Being outside all the time, that sounds like fun to me.
I always thought I'd like to go back and be either kind of like an anthropologist or a sociologist, because I think that experiences that people have and the way they think about things based on their culture, their language, their location is so interesting. And I would like to have studied that or use that in order to kind of see how trends or patterns come up with people, with cultures.
What advice do you have for kids who are struggling in school?
Find a mentor. Find somebody that has the time and the willingness to help. Students have to be proactive. They have to reach outside of this Prussian model that we have, and they have to understand themselves and learn first and foremost what helps them learn better, and then expect that from others. Michelangelo, in the same way that I would teach everybody else, it doesn't work that way. So my responsibility is to give you a platform that allows you to use your own special skills base in the way that you learn about Michelangelo and still get you the good grades at the end if you make that effort. We have to vet that because it's our job. It's their job to learn.
Oh. Well, students who are struggling in school have to do two things. They have to push themselves to do the best that they can in a particular subject in order to, get a grade that is satisfactory to them, to the teacher, but to also realize that it's a temporary thing. This is not the end-all be-all, and you're gonna get through it. And once you get through it, it's like doing exercise. You're very happy that you did it. You've learned some things about yourself, but yet it was difficult, and that's what you learn from it.
Any other general advice for kids in the current times?
You speak on the side of the spectrum that looks to the future, and that is egalitarian, that is accepting. But I think it's an important time for people to speak up and to find themselves in this changing world and to be comfortable with themselves. I don't think there's been any time in our history that we've been allowed to be ourselves in the way that we can now. And I think that's super, super important that people take advantage of that moment. Otherwise, it may slip away. If there's ever a time to speak up and say your piece, and which means you're probably speaking from your heart, then now's the time to do that.
I think my general advice would be to understand the power that you have, understand the voice that you have, and that your voice and your ability to put your voice together with other people matters. It's not a matter of just always grouping together with people who share the same voice, but it's a matter of understanding that there's lots of different voices, and all of those voices, when moved together, can achieve goals that are beyond just the singular person or the small group of people.
Well, thank you for your time.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thanks.